buddy, David Neagle. Welcome to another episode of the Successful Mind Podcast. And today I want to talk about a program that I have called The Art of Success. We do it a few times a year, 2 to 3 times a year, depending on the year. I get a lot of questions about what it's for, what does it actually help with. The program's been around. I originally created it around the end of 2006, 2007. It was a short teaching that I did for some private clients that I had, and then I expanded it into all of my original content for that program. And of course, it's gotten better, and adapted and all that throughout the years. But everybody that succeeds starts there with me. Like from a perspective of I'm going to pay for something and try this out, what David has, and see if it makes any difference. That's where most people start anyway. What's the reason that I'm telling you this? Well, number one, we're going to have one coming up in October. So check our website, check your email for, marketing materials that come out on that. But one of the things that I'm really wanting to talk about as far as what does that program do? There's a fundamental idea and a realization that human beings have when they want to become successful and actually begin to achieve that concept in their mind. And I'm just going to lay a premise out for you, something for you to really consider and think about. Whenever we want to make a significant change in our life, we really need to consider the idea of a North Star, so to speak. A truth that we're actually going after in our life as a concept, as a vision, as a principle, as a standard in which we want to create our life by. And in the world that we live in today, it's very difficult for people to find that. I actually think it was easier back when I first started to find that because there wasn't as many places to look for that so-called truth. You had religion, and many people around the world are raised with different religious beliefs, and there's some truth in all of those different religions. There's also biographies and autobiographies, the success of others that we can kind of find our way a little bit based on their trials and errors in life, their successes and failures, the recommendations that they give to individuals. There's coaches and mentors. There's people that teach fundamentals about behavior and mindset. And then you get into stuff like marketing and advertising and sales and all of that. So there's many different places that we can look. But we have a problem that we're up against in a very, very big way that keeps the majority of the population of the planet not living in a successful way. It keeps them extremely reactive to the life that they were kind of born into. And I'd like to explain that a little bit. When we're born, for the first 7 years, our subconscious mind is being programmed by everything that we're exposed to. And that means all the things that we hear, the meaning of everything that we're aware of. Like if you think about however old you are right now, and all the meanings to things that you know about your life and the world and your experiences and stuff. That's a lot. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of information there. But what most people don't consider is that almost all of those meanings, you got at least the fundamental foundation of them, the early rudiments or principles of it, probably back sometime before 7 years old. There's an issue with this. The issue is, number one, you didn't have the ability to reject it because the ability to reject anything comes from the conscious mind, not the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind, in fact, can't actually reject something. Whatever gets turned over to the subconscious, it becomes a pattern in our life. And the only reason for the subconscious is so that it can develop and sustain all of the patterns that actually make life a lot easier for us. So we don't have to think about everything all the time. But around the age of 7, we start to develop a conscious mind, which gives us the ability to accept or reject, to think, to critically think. It gives us the ability to actively engage our imagination. It's where our greatest power lies, our ability to choose in life, because that's all we ever do. Every day, all you're doing all day long is making choices. That's it. And it's your greatest power. And it's by those choices that you not only create your life, but you make life either a heaven or a hell. In those first 7 years, We were given ideas, meanings, concepts, beliefs, values by people that were living a life that we really don't want to live, right? And I'm not saying that with any judgment. If you look at, what do we look at for reference anyway, right? We look at the way that we were raised and we go, hey, I want more of that or I want less of that, something different in my life. The people that raised you couldn't give you something that they didn't have. So for instance, why is most of the world live below the poverty line? Because most of the people that are having kids have no idea how to earn money. They don't know how to get above the poverty line. And it's not really taught. The true way to really earn money, to train yourself to be able to earn as much as you want, is taught very, very little and only by a few people when it comes to a global idea. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, come on, David, there's people talking about money. There's a million different books on it. They're not talking about money in the way that I'm talking about it. They're talking about money in the traditional modes and mediums and businesses or employment in the way people have been trained to earn money. And most people are not trained in business. Most people are trained to go to work for somebody else. And going to work for somebody else purely from an earning money concept is one of the worst ways to earn money, because you're trading your time for money and perhaps a little bit of a skill. But unless you're really smart with what you do with those dollars, you don't get wealthy. And your whole life is based on the limited amount that you have or you don't have that's coming into your life. When it could just as easily be taught to kids, young kids. I've taught this to children, how to earn the amount of money that they actually want to earn, where there's no limit in the amount of money that you can earn. That is a real possibility for every person, but it's not taught. And it's interesting that it's not taught, but I'll save that for another podcast. What we want to focus on is, what is it about our life that we want to change? And if we understand a couple of basic truths right off the bat to give us kind of a reflection back into who we're being as a person, there's two truths I like to start everybody that I work with. And that is, number one, you were born to be a success. And number two, success is easy. Now, I could sit here and talk for a half a day about why that's true, but let me just give you a couple ideas. Number one, biologically, everything had to succeed in order for you to be born. From the moment that your mother and father came together, all the way until your birth, everything had to succeed for you to be a life form and be a sustained life form. The other thing about it is that if you look, I love looking at nature as a source of truth, okay? And I mean nature basically uninterrupted by human beings. Because when you look at it, you realize something fascinating. It doesn't struggle. It doesn't strive. It doesn't sacrifice. It's not difficult. It knows exactly what to do. It doesn't question itself. It just does what it's supposed to do every day. And if it doesn't get killed by something outside of itself, it succeeds. You don't see animals and plants suffering in a corner somewhere, crying, being depressed, being on medication, trying to figure out what they are, what they want to do with their life. But we're increasingly seeing this with human beings all over the world. And it's because of the information that they're given in those first 7 years about who they are and what life is and how they need to live their life and what they can actually be and what their actual strengths and weaknesses are and are not. So when a person begins to wake up and they say, you know something, I want to do something different. I started to think this way back in the late 80s. This started going through my mind. I was not happy about the direction that I was in, and I didn't know how to turn it around. And it became a consuming thought for a few years before I actually did something, almost by accident, if you will. Not that I really believe in accidents, but almost an accident. And I saw a result that so blew my mind, it inspired me to begin to learn more. And in that path, one of the things that I didn't realize, it's a fundamental problem with almost every person you will come in contact with, is that we're taught from birth that success or to be good in anything is actually difficult. I was talking to a client today and they asked me to explain this to them because they were running into this idea of the word discipline. And they said, I think my interpretation of this word is making it very difficult for me to accept the idea that I'm born to be a success and that success is easy. And I said, well, let's understand the etymology of the word to begin with. It comes from the word disciple, and disciple means to be a student of. It has nothing to do with making yourself do something that you don't want to do. It has nothing to do with punishment. When you constantly hear, you need to be more disciplined, more disciplined, more disciplined, more disciplined, what people are really saying is that you need to force yourself to do things that you don't want to do to get results that you say that you want. But we don't see this anywhere else in nature, just with human beings. And I began to question that many, many years ago as a flawed idea. Now, I couldn't prove it was a flawed idea at the time, but I thought, what if human beings got it wrong? What if we've actually been taught something for so long based on the way that people live, and we just came to flawed conclusions and have been passing them on for thousands of generations, and there's actually something wrong with that thinking. But because it's the only experience most people have, it seems to be, anyway, that it's a sound perspective on life itself. And I thought, okay, so if it's a truth, then it must exist elsewhere as a fundamental principle. But it doesn't, nor could I find it. Now, remember, when I talk about nature, I am not talking about nature that has been majorly disrupted and refocused by human beings. I'm talking nature out in its own element, the way that it was designed to be by the architect of the universe, right? And that's plants, that's animals, that's everything that lives that we call life in nature. We just don't see a struggle there. We see it change. We see it adapt. We see it thrive. We see it move. We see it morph. It does everything that it needs to do in order to be prolific in whatever it is that it was designed to do. And it does something else interesting. Every bit of nature in its own uniqueness contributes something to its environment, and it takes or receives something from its environment. Now, that's an absolute law. It's the law of giving and receiving. It's also the law of cause and effect that operates with every living thing in the world. It's a fundamental principle, both scientific, spiritually, religiously, right? The idea of cause and effect. So if we want to have success, whatever success that you say that you want to start thinking about the idea that success itself is actually an effect, and it's a natural effect. It's the result of right thinking and right behavior and right actions and right results. And when we do that, we get what it is that we want. We have success in that area. But what if we were to remove the idea that it needs to be hard? What if we were to remove the idea that we need to make ourselves do a bunch of things that we don't actually love? And what if some of the things that we think that we don't like actually were a natural part of who we were as human beings, but we were trained to believe that we don't like them? So we don't do them. So then it becomes something that we avoid in life. Now, I work with a lot of business people, and one of the number one things that I've seen, and this was also part of myself, by the way, many years ago, was that most people don't like sales. Yet, fundamentally, sales is the only thing that moves money anywhere in the world, because money is an idea or a concept that we came up with for a fair and equitable value trade in and of itself, right? And even if you say to me, David, would you loan me $20? And I say, yeah, here's $20. That's a sale. Every form of giving money or donating money or charitable contribution or regular sales in every business operation is a form of sales, right? It's the communication from one person or business to another person or business that I need something, and do you have something for me? And there's a lot of different ways that you could paint that room too, right? But it's still all the same thing. It's sales. I wouldn't say I've read every sales book that's out there, but I would say that I've read most of them. And I've read ones that go all the way back to the late 1800s, early 1900s, and then books that had to do with sales that weren't actually marked as sales books. And not all, but many of them talk about the idea within sales itself that basically the idea that you need to manipulate people. You need to get a person to do something in order to make a sale. So that, on top of other people's goals, very often gives sales a very bad name. As we're growing up, if we experience that, if we're around it, or if we meet a salesperson that's like, not ethical or whatever, we could very easily develop the belief in our mind that we don't want to sell. However, in these books, it says nobody's a born salesperson, that it comes through sheer hard work, discipline, application of that, and mastery of the skill set, so to speak. But that's not true. I've never met a little child that is not a born salesperson. Little children will sell you on the greatest ideas and fantasies. They will continue to ask for what they want over and over again until the people around them begin the process of stopping them from that behavior. It usually gets to the point where they're shamed and guilted for the behavior, which totally locks it in a room that they have a very difficult time getting out of. In the process of that stopping, one of the ways that we're encouraged to stop is by the sheer rejection of the idea itself. And then you've got a child with hurt feelings, and they slowly begin to limit the exuberance of what they want in life. The fundamental idea that life is an amazing adventure, and that begins to shut down over time until you have an adult that wants nothing to do with sales. However, the actual ability to communicate what you have in value for somebody else, to help somebody else get clear on something that they want to be, do, or have for themselves. Every one of us holds the ability to do that. And very often we do it with people in ways where we don't realize it. Like we try to get our spouse to do something they may not necessarily want to do, but we want to do it. Or we try to get kids to do something that they don't necessarily want to do, but we want them to do it. Or we try to get a pet to do something that doesn't necessarily want to do, but we want them to do it. That's all a version of sales. But in most of the way that we do it, we, instead of actually learning the beauty of sales, we learn the manipulative parts of it. And then the natural reaction of most human beings is, I don't want anything to do with that. I wouldn't want anything to do with it either. But that's something that we learn. But the point of telling you all this is that sales is something that's very natural. And if a person stepped into the naturalness of that for themselves, right? We would say that they're a natural salesperson. Everybody's a natural salesperson. But if you stepped into the naturalness of it, you would be awakening in yourself an ability and a skill that's dormant that would allow you to earn any amount of money that you want, because sales is the highest paid profession in the world, bar none. The richest people are also the greatest salespeople all over the world. What if the idea that we had around sales was wrong? What if the idea that we had around success was wrong? That it's hard, that it takes tremendous amount of mindset and discipline to be able to do it? What if the construct that keeps us in the idea, like a box that we can't get out of, so to speak, like a prison, if you will, is full of ideas that because we take them as valid and true, we can't see any other way to get out? And what if the truth was actually that it was easy? And what if somebody could help you find that truth inside of yourself, where you literally didn't have to do anything that you didn't want to do again in your life, and anything that contributed to your success that you really think that you don't want to do. Now, there is a fine line here with this, okay? So I'm totally transparent about that. But most of the things, when a person says to me, here's my vision, here's my goal, here's what I want to do, and they love that idea and they love most of the components of it, but they have something about it that they don't like, one of two things is true. Either that thing they're not supposed to do and they need to find somebody else to do it, or if it's necessary, if it's 100% necessary that they do it, then their frame of reference around it is incorrect. And when that frame changes, it'll go from something that they loathe to something that they love. That is an absolute certainty. I mean, I've worked with thousands of people and I've never seen that not to be true. However, a blind spot's a blind spot. And when you don't have any ideas that open doors, all they do is keep them closed to you, you stay stuck. Anyway, we go through all of this in the Art of Success. It's something that really think about getting involved in October. You really want to be there. And if you're in a business, get all your people to attend, to listen to it. But until then, think to yourself about this idea. If I could change just this much, just a small fraction of my belief system to something that had more flow to it. In other words, I was literally drawn to something so that I could spend my days doing what I loved with people that I loved, having an impact in a way that really fits me, my personality, who I am, the way that I want to make an impact in the world. Don't you think that your life would be much more smoother and you would experience the ease of success that actually exists? I'm not saying that people don't have to work. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the way that we've been taught to work is fundamentally flawed. It keeps us locked in a prison, and it keeps us doing things that we don't like, that we don't want, and in many cases with people that we don't want. How many people are working for somebody else and they loathe it from the moment they get up in the morning, but they don't know a way out, right? And they think, well, if I go work for somebody else here, somebody else there, it's going to be the same thing, different story, different picture, different color. It's going to be the same thing, right? Because they're only looking at those opportunities as a way out, but it's not the only way out. My belief, my truth is that God put a desire in each one of us that not only we're supposed to bring to life inside of us, but it will point the direction of this amazing life that we have to live if we will just follow it. The average person, though, has so many reasons why they can't, and they've stuffed away that desire so long ago inside of themselves that some of them can't even find it anymore. It's not that it's not there, it's that you're not asking the right questions. And if somebody was in front of you that could ask you those questions to unlock those gates that keep that God-given desire locked up inside yourself, because it's in yourself, your life would begin to transform right in front of your very eyes. It doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter what your gender is, doesn't matter what your color is, doesn't matter where you're born, it doesn't matter what resources you think you have or you don't have. Everything that you need is available to you if that door begins to unlock and open up, because everything begins to move toward you. You see, you were born to be a success, and success is easy. The problem is you're dealing with incorrect information. And my suggestion is start thinking about the implications of that, if it's actually true, because it is. I'll see you on the next episode.